Okay, so I'm kicking off my game of Labyrinth, and I've done the first two Jihadist action phases. That puts it to a US set of actions. The first one I played was Bin Laden. Basically, this is him making speeches. Hey, I'm still alive, ha ha ha. If the US can play it to kill him, essentially. But the Jihadists play it, and it affects US prestige. There's an Islamist rule country, so prestige drops 4 points, and that hurts the U.S. in terms of the war of ideas concept. So it's going to be harder. Basically, I'm expecting the U.S. to go in hard in Afghanistan first thing. That's what I would do, and that's what I'm going to do if I can. The second one is a regional Al-Qaeda, 2 unmarked Muslim countries, not Iran. Iran is sort of not really part of the game, and they have effects. And you place a cell in each, or 2 in each for Islamicist rule. I have an Islamicist rule. There's lots of unmarked countries, so I drop them into Egypt for its 3 resources, and Somalia because it's a besieged region. I'm not sure that was really regime. I'm not sure that's really necessary, but it seems kind of interesting to me to spread in those kind of areas. I can't put it in Pakistan, which I'd love to do. Central Asia is an interesting choice. I might have wanted to do it there because there's the weapons of mass destruction effects there. It's good to get cells there in Russia. So maybe I want to dump it there instead. See, I'm targeting the resources, but maybe the resources aren't as important. I'll go up there, try to get a weapon of mass destruction. I think that's more interesting. Anyway. Yeah, but I don't have a card that'll give me that. But the U.S. might. And that'll make their life more difficult. Now we move on to the U.S.'s actions. Oh, no. I gotta make initial tests for the countries I put it in. Okay, so I have to worry about the governance of... Well, let's do Central Asia first. Let's see what we get. We get a 2, they're poor governance. And... place marker in neutral if test. And now that makes this go up by 1. And now I do the same over in Somalia. And there I got a 5. That's going to be a fair country, which doesn't really help me. That helps the U.S. actually. Okay, now let's go over the U.S. activities. We're at the resolve plot stage. If any plots had been placed, they would fire off at this point. The U.S. has to react to them immediately afterwards. But anyway, I played a 3-point card for the regime change. I threw 4 plus 5, 9 military units off my troops track. Now that's got me overstretched, but into Afghanistan, and I got lucky. I got a fair governance there. Chances are it's going to be poor, but that's very helpful to me. They're an ally. Now, because it's fair governance, it only takes a 2-point card to do something there. I've got some choices. What I'd like to do is the war of ideas, I think, to improve the governance. Because if I can get that up to 2, I win the fight there. Here's the problem, though. My War of Ideas table, I'm attempting to shift to good. That's -1. I've got a -1 from my penalty. Wow, this is looking pretty difficult. Oh, no. I don't have a penalty, but I have a -1 from my prestige. I don't have any aid, and I don't have any good allies next to me there. So... it doesn't feel like it's time to do that yet. I've got to build up my prestige. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a disruption action. I've got at least 2 troops, so I can kill 2 cells, and that gives me a point of prestige, shooting me up to medium now. I've got some chance of doing this. One of the big advantages of this was I played the Pirates card. This would be an Islamicist event triggered, but it only works if Somalia or Yemen is under Islamicist rule. That's not the case yet. but I'm kind of worried about Somalia, so I'm getting rid of a card that could hurt me if it was in my hand maybe a little later in the turn. Since there are no plots, I shoot back over to the Jihadist action phase. And I'm not going to play in this much detail for the most part, but when I show you new things, I'll try to show you what happened, or at least talk about what happened. As is often the case when you first play one of these games, I'm kind of on a kick on running events here. So, the first one, Jaish al-Mahdi. Shia militants rise up. I'm able to play this. It can only be played in a Shia mixed country with cells and troops. Well, here's one. Let's see what we got there. If the U.S. played this, it would help them. But instead, I'm allowed to play it to reduce governance by a level, but not to Islamicist rule. So this goes from fair down to poor. I've kind of disrupted Afghanistan a little bit. And that means we're back up here. And I don't know, did I count this? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I failed to put that into play after that. And in fact, I didn't remove this. Okay. Now, I also am playing the Al-Anbar event, Sunni Resistance Sanctuary. Place a cell in Iraq. Disrupt in Iraq or Syria affects one cell only, not a cadre. And it blocks the U.S. bin Laden and Zawahiri, and it's blocked by the Anbar Awakening. Now, we don't have the Anbar Awakening in place, so I have to look for this Al-Anbar. Not that one. Is it on the back? Anbar, disrupt one cell, yeah. It's on the back of this, and we got an event space. And that only affects Iraq and Syria. How likely am I to remember that? I don't know. But I've got a cell in Iraq now, and I've got some advantages. Now, this card is removed from the game. It can't be replayed. I'm going to put it up here just to help remind me what it does in addition to that, because I think it's a little complicated. That pushes me over to the U.S. action phase because I played 2 cards. The U.S. did some more disruption activities and have gotten rid of all the cells in Afghanistan. They played this oil price spike card. That could be useful because it allows you to fish a card out of here, but they didn't want to play it for the event. But they played this one, and this is a mandatory event. They did this and successfully changed Afghanistan back up using the War of Ideas, +1. But now they've got to worry about a U.S. government change through the election. And the posture, there's a +1 to the die roll to this make it even, could affect things. They get a 3-4. That's going to change the U.S. to soft. And because the rest of the world is not soft, the rest of the world is hard right now, it drops U.S. prestige. Painful. This doesn't get removed from the game. There's other possible elections, but there's a big deck there. Of course, something like the oil price spike could cause this kind of effect to swing U.S. even outside of the normal election cycle somehow. Well, again, no plots, and we go back to the jihadists. So the jihadists did a couple of recruiting die rolls. This one, hey, this is a card which doesn't affect them because Patriot Act's not in effect yet. Great. So they get a die roll for free without having the event take place. And then here, the Saddam card. This is one that they could have used to set their funding up. But their funding's as high as it can go right now. They were kind of hoping to hold it, but they wanted the extra dice. They want to get a regime change in place in Central Asia. It's poor. It seems fairly easy to them. They're not really getting the traction there that they want. By the way, I forgot something in my rules coverage. At the end of each turn, certain things, kind of a maintenance cleanup takes place. So funding and prestige both go down under certain circumstances. Funding always goes down. Prestige goes down if there's any Islamicist rule country. Prestige goes up if the world posture is 3 in the direction of the U.S. I remembered something affected that. Well, this is what it is. Lapsing events, these are sort of one-turn events that are placed here. The reserves are cleared out. You get new hands, and then the regime change flips over so that there's no penalty if the game ends on that turn. But that's only at the end of 3 decks. There's one turn where that is kind of important, or maybe a few if the deck looks like it might run out, but whatever. Alright, so we're on to the US turn to try to react to what's going on. Well, the US, especially in soft posture, wants to do the War of Ideas, so they play this card. Now this is going to trigger the event, that's fine. They're playing it on the War of Ideas in the United Kingdom. Now, this is a little different. You don't roll on the War of Ideas tables, and it probably should have been named a different kind of action, even though it's the same. It makes sense that it's a War of Ideas, but this is a different kind of War of Ideas, okay? This table only affects when you're playing with the Muslim world. On this, you just make a roll on the posture table, and in this case, as is not too unlikely, the UK ended up with soft posture. Great. That's what the US has now, so that increased our prestige a point. But the important thing is we actually dropped this to 0. Now, the event triggered China to be tested as well, and China ended up soft, so now the world's in alignment with the US, only Israel is hard. This card is now removed from the game, and I threw it over in the box. And then they played a 2-point card to try to trigger Afghanistan to good, get rid of the regime change, make everything nice. Well, they're still at a -1. They rolled a 4 and didn't get anything out of it. So that gets rid of that. That's 2 cards, no plots, and we're over. Alright, we finished the Islamicists' turn, and they opened up with this as their first plot. They didn't want this played. If US is soft, they are. They should have gotten rid of this earlier. They weren't expecting that. Place a cooperative threat reduction in Russia, and if ally or neutral Central Asia, well, that would also be there. And it blocks loose nukes, Hue, and Kazakh strain. That doesn't sound good. And then they played this, which they had to take the event for a recruitment in Iraq. Well, that gave the ability to remove even a sleeper cell like in Iraq because of the troops here using special forces to go in, wiped them out. You know, that sucks, but it seemed like the best choice of things to get rid of. Alternative options would have been knocking out one of these Central Asian ones, and those are kind of dangerous, to tell you the truth. So I don't know. Anyway, we're on to the U.S. The U.S. continues its War of Ideas. One of the cards, Lashkar-e-Taiba, ends up dropping a couple of cells into Pakistan and India. That's not a good thing. And then the other one they were planning on using on Turkey if they succeeded in the War of Ideas they played here. They got a +1 aid there, so it's getting easier, but they still haven't resolved Afghanistan. They haven't won yet. But they're doing quite well. We'll see where it goes. Islamicists only have 1 card left. They can't hold it. There are no plots in place. Just making sure. I know I tried a plot over here in Somalia. There are no plots in place, so that's a good move there. The U.S. can hold their card if they want to, and that would be the end of the turn. And I can tell you, unless it's a plot, they are holding it. They don't want to play this card. They really don't want to play this card, and it's a 3-point card that they're holding to avert a plot. That's an important strategy in the game. You do not want to allow, especially if there's cells in the U.S., the Islamicists to have cards left if you don't have 3 points available. You could have some of them stored up here so you don't have to hold a 3-point card, but you got to have those points. Otherwise, you're just courting losing the game if there's a cell in the U.S. If they had a couple of cards, it might be even worse. And the Jihadist final card was a 2-point card. They did a recruitment in Central Asia. That's looking dangerous. There could be a major jihad there. U.S. doesn't have much it can do about that, though. We saw the card they have in their hand. They don't want to play that. Not until they get Afghanistan fixed. This card triggers off a 1-value operation for the U.S. player. And it also allows them to do an interruption where they play an extra card from their hand, triggering the intel. What they did for their 1 point was they shipped 3 units of troops back up into the U.S. They've pulled out partially of Afghanistan. They've got enough right now that they can control it. Now, this makes it kind of interesting to perhaps travel to Afghanistan and cause problems there, or just recruit there. They can automatically recruit without successful die rolls. I think they need cells for that still, though. So they'd have to travel to have it happen. They just need they wouldn't have to roll to succeed. Now, that's going to improve funding and get me up to 8 cards. Or improve my equivalent of funding. The Jihadists are still doing fine. They're still at 9 cards, right? Unless this regime change did something horrible. No, it did not. So far the U.S. hasn't done anything which has dropped funding. They have things that they can do that do, but I don't remember what they are anymore. Okay. Now, and I may have to look that up. Let's go through the process of looking at these. Funding does go down by 1 automatically every turn. Prestige is going to go down if anything's Islamicist rule. That's not the case. Prestige would go up if the world was soft enough, but the world's not in complete agreement. Lapsing events, reserves are set to 0. We weren't saving any. We're going to get new hands. The regime change flips over. Not that that much matters. This card goes in the discard pile. And we're ready to start another turn. And I'm going to load this one up. And the U.S. has kept their 1 card. They do not want to play that.